Hi, good morning. My name is Alex, if you don't know me, and today I wanted to do an informational, hopefully educational video about cannabinoids. I want to preface all of this by saying that I am not a doctor or a medical professional of any kind. I have just spent the last year or so reading and learning about cannabinoids and am eager to pass on the information that I've learned and to continue learning more and to share more as I learn more. So I want to start out with a definition of cannabinoids so that as we move forward, you can know what they are. And I apologize now, you'll see me looking down at my notes often so that I can stay on track. Otherwise, this video would be way too long. We'll just put it that way. So cannabinoids are a class of diverse chemical compounds that act on receptors in cells that alter neurotransmitter release in the brain. There are over 100 cannabinoids in the cannabis plant, by the way. And now let's talk a little bit about how they were discovered. In 1895, a group of researchers isolated and identified the first plant-derived cannabinoid, which is CBN or cannabinol. And then in the 1930s, the chemical structure of CBN was figured out. In the 40s, another group was able to identify a second cannabinoid, which you're probably more familiar with at this point, CBD. And in 1963, the chemical structure of CBD was identified as well. In 1964, an Israeli doctor first isolated and identified THC, which is now, of course, the well-known psychoactive cannabinoid. In 1988, cannabinoid receptors were located for the first time in the brain of an animal, and that allowed scientists to begin to better understand how they work. In the early 90s, the same Israeli doctor and his colleagues located and identified two of the body's naturally produced major endocannabinoids. Keep in mind that endo is for endogenous, which means growing or originating from within an organism. Anandamide is one and is known as the bliss molecule. Ananda or Ananda is actually the Sanskrit word for bliss. And the other one is called 2-AG, which has a long name, but we'll keep it simple for now with 2-AG. Anandamide is a neurotransmitter that has a very similar chemical structure to THC, and it synthesizes in areas of the brain that control memory, movement, motivation, fertility, appetite, and pain control. 2-AG's primary role is to bind to the CB2 receptor. We'll talk about those receptors in just a minute. And it can reduce inflammation as it does that because it sends a message to stop sending so many attack cells to an affected area. Also, studies suggest that it contributes to other areas like appetite and pain, like anandamide does. And both are thought to prevent cancer cell proliferation, which is just amazing and fascinating to me. So this discovery of the body's endocannabinoid system, or ECS, I'll call it ECS from here out, has brought a lot of breakthroughs in what we understand in the area of using cannabinoids therapeutically. The ECS is designed to receive and process the naturally produced endocannabinoids. And when that's all happening or functioning properly as it should, that regulates a number of vital body processes, things like anxiety, appetite, immune response, along with the ones that I mentioned before, like memory, pain control, and fertility. The ECS is a network of receptors with different functions that span across our entire bodies. There are CB1 receptors, which are found in the brain and the central nervous system, and in nerves, and also in some organs. And then there are CB2 receptors, which are mostly found in peripheral organs, like those of the endocrine system or hormonal organs, and especially cells that are essential to the immune system. There are also other receptors, but those are still less understood at this point. Experts agree that the main function of the ECS is to maintain homeostasis. The definition of homeostasis is a relatively stable state of equilibrium between different but interdependent groups or elements in an organism. I also found a KID definition, which is a lot more on my level. It's the tendency for conditions inside of the body to stay pretty much the same, even when outside environmental conditions change. So with all of that, it makes sense that when the ECS is not functioning properly, that can be due to genetic issues or deficiencies in endocannabinoids, or probably a whole host of other things that people haven't really figured out yet. There can be all kinds of issues with those processes that we've been talking about. A side note is that I found some really interesting information on endocannabinoid deficiency specifically. It explained that the strongest evidence that they have for this being a real thing is the data that they have on migraines, fibromyalgia, and IBS, which not only have treatment-resistant tendencies, but they also share specific clinical characteristics like an increased sensitivity to pain, high levels of depression and anxiety, and a lack of pathological or abnormal signs at the tissue level. Actually, a number of authors who've written about this subject feel that cystic fibrosis, PTSD, autism, colic, multiple miscarriages, and some other really specific issues can be added to that list as well because of similar characteristics. So then we have phytocannabinoids that enter the picture, or plant cannabinoids like the ones that we've been discussing, CBD, CBN, THC. These cannabinoids stimulate the ECS and the receptors found there, bringing balance and therefore healing in a number of ways as they do so. When the receptors are activated by cannabinoids, it helps protect cells from viruses, bad bacteria, cancers, and other malignancies as well. A little fact about CBD specifically is that it doesn't actually directly bind to the CB1 and CB2 receptors, even though it is a cannabinoid. It instead affects those receptors indirectly, raising our natural levels of endocannabinoids to bring about some of those healing effects. So next, I want to give some specific information about cannabinoids and breastfeeding, as this seems to be a pretty popular question, specifically in the case of CBD oil. So first things first, there are naturally occurring cannabinoids found in breast milk. And I'm going to say the word fascinating again. Guys, this is fascinating. The most abundant one is 2-AG, which we learned about earlier. And 2-AG seems to be super critical in keeping newborns alive because it controls both the suckling response of infants and the muscles in the tongue. Anandamide also has neuroprotectant properties as the postnatal brain is developing. There have been a lot of interesting studies about this as well. So while we have this really fascinating information, what we don't have are actual studies on cannabinoid use during lactation or pregnancy because it's an issue of ethics. What we do have, though, is a lot of anecdotal evidence and reports of many moms who have continued to use cannabinoids during both pregnancy and lactation. For some people, this, coupled with the science of cannabinoids, would be enough for them to continue using or choose to use cannabinoids. If you want to know my personal stance on that, feel free to contact me and I can share where I stand on that. The next thing, the final thing that I want to touch on is a really complex topic, but I want to briefly mention the fact that both anandamide and 2-AG are present in the uterus and embryo. Scientists have discovered that there's actually this cannabinoid sensor that influences crucial steps in early pregnancy. In fact, in order for an embryo to even be able to attach to the uterine lining, a really specific amount of anandamide has to be present for that to happen. One study that I read actually found anandamide activity to be much lower in women who miscarried than in women who didn't. So that, plus other results from that study, suggest that endocannabinoids may play a pretty vital role in fertility as well. So that's it for now. Hopefully this was helpful. It was a lot of information, and I'm sure that there are a lot of you out there who enjoy a great testimonial, but also love to know the science behind the way things work, especially when it comes to something like this. I personally still have a lot to learn. I don't have all the answers, but I love to research and would be glad to help find answers for you if you have specific questions. Also, if you are a visual learner like I am, go ahead and Google things like endocannabinoid receptors or the body's endocannabinoid system, and take a look at the images that you find there. It might help connect some of what I've been explaining today. So yeah, thank you for watching. And again, please let me know if you have any questions and I will do my best to find answers for you and point you in the direction of good information about these different things. And I do plan on doing another cannabinoid video soon with some more specific questions that people have asked. So be on the lookout for that as well. And if you have questions, let me know and maybe I can add those to that video as well. Thanks guys. Thanks for watching. Bye.